Hello, this is Nathan Eisminger again, and today we'll be talking about Customer Discovery 2.0. I have several rhetorical questions, rhetorical polls that I'll be asking here today, hoping that you can ponder and answer and be willing to share in our workshop. And the first one is, how many interviews have you conducted so far? You should be working on finding customer segments and testing your hypotheses, even at this stage in the game, understanding that it's a continual process of improvement. You're going to continue to refine your hypothesis and the questions that you're asking and testing. And you should always ask, especially these early interviewees, if it's okay if you circle back with them if you have additional questions. So before we invest the time and money to build and launch our product, we need to make sure that we have data that can, one, confirm our suspicion that there is a need for our product, and two, help us build the product that people actually want. So how do we do this? How do we turn our guesses into facts? The answer is through continuing customer discovery. Here's where we're headed today. We're looking to refine and expand your customer discovery skills. As a group, you're all gaining experience in customer discovery through going through these exercises, going through these interviews. We'll be looking to all of you to share your experience and aha moments so that the entire group can be more successful with customer discovery. Let's revisit the three-step framework for customer discovery. Step 1, plan the meeting. Step 2, conduct the interview. Step 3, process the information. We're going to want to learn from all of you what's been working in each of these steps. In step 1, the two goals are to articulate a clear hypothesis to test and to get the meeting. In our workshop, we're looking for a team that has a clear hypothesis that they would like to share. Is it QRST? Is it qualitative, relevant, specific, and testable? We also want to hear what has been your best strategy for setting up potential customer discovery interviews. Who is going to have an example of what your email ask is to get the interview? Is your email ask standardized in language? Are you using the same one? How have you refined it each time? Why have you refined it? Step 2, conducting the interview. Who has had a particularly enlightening interview or one that went really well? Why do you think it went well? Who got a great story out of an interview? How did you get that story? We're looking for you to share this in our workshop. Step 3, process the information. Are you using the workbook to track your data? What other tools are people using? As a team, how are you analyzing the key learnings from the interviews? Let's take an even deeper dive into these 3 steps as we refine our techniques at customer discovery. So step 1, planning the meeting. Your hypothesis should help you learn something critical about your business model that you didn't know. And it needs to be, again, QRST, qualitative, relevant, specific, and testable. Are you testing assumptions that can crater your business? Have you identified saboteurs and requested interviews with them and identified potential weaknesses in your hypothesis from those saboteurs? Common assumptions that need to be tested at this early stage are identifying possible customer segments, making sure you've got the right ones, the problems that they need to solve. How big of a problem is it for that segment? Remember, sometimes there's a problem that they don't care about. It might be something that they're taking a vitamin for rather than a shark bite problem. Is it a shark bite problem for them? That's how you know that you're on the right track. How are they currently trying to solve the problem? And what is their motivation for solving that problem? Don't be afraid to use the researcher or student card to set up interviews when you're calling. And you can always appeal to the ego. You know, I super enjoyed the lecture I saw online. I was wondering if I could ask you a few more questions about it. And don't be afraid to make cold calls if you need to plan and get your meeting. Speaking of that, use the resources that you have available to you. So for example, your mentors, previous iQuar participants, you should be searching LinkedIn extensively. You could even email your Christmas card list a short ask for the type of person you're looking to connect with, an easy process to do so. If you need to interview a job title that is tightly gate-kept, find a person in your personal network who is or works with that person and interviews them to find out how to access that person. Where do they hang out in real life and online? Who do they follow? Remember to fish where the fish are. Go to where your people hang out. Go to where the solution is being sought. Think about people that are sick shopping in the cold remedy aisle at Walgreens. Trade shows are often cluster many people that are seeking such solutions. Step 2, conducting the interview. Use questions as a guide and not a script. Let the conversation flow, but try to remember to keep it that you're testing your hypothesis, but don't be afraid to let conversation flow. You might learn some new data that might help you refine your hypothesis. Be ready to hear things that you don't want to hear. You know, my team heard that the problem they were trying to solve was not a shark bite issue with the first segment that they identified, but that was vital information and helped them pivot. You want to ask stories about past behaviors. And a key thing here is listen more than you talk. This is not the time for you to be selling your product. This is the time for you to test your hypothesis to see if you have really identified the right customers for your solution. Don't be afraid to dig and ask why and follow up if you hear something that's promising. And then at the end of the interview, don't be afraid to ask two things. What should I have asked you? And then also referrals. Who else should I be talking to about this? And you could potentially get a few more leads on additional interviews from the person that you're talking to. Processing the information. Use a tool to document key learnings. Are you using your workbook? Use a note taker or write your notes immediately after the interview. This information, that you're gaining, it's completely normal and expected that you're going to be taking notes, writing notes furiously as you get information. Try to translate that information into metrics wherever possible, and take time to reflect. Look for patterns as you continue to refine your ecosystem model and the customer segments that you're trying to identify. Understanding the exchanges that happen in your ecosystem model will happen through illuminating conversations that you have in these interviews. So here's a few question starters that you should be thinking about for your interviews. What's the biggest issue dealing with blank? What are the implications of not solving problem X? How are you dealing with that issue today? What have you tried in the past? Where does the budget come from to deal with that issue? Important there. Where's the money coming from? Who has the purchasing power? Who makes those decisions about information exchanges, product exchanges, purchasing power decisions? These questions are going to help you test your hypothesis and refine your ecosystem model and ultimately find the right customer segment as you go in customer discovery. So in our workshop, you're going to practice crafting stronger questions. These questions specifically related to your hypothesis are going to help you probe for pain points and gain opportunities. Here as an example, we have a hypothesis. Commercial chicken farmers in the US broiler belt will use our AI predator prevention technology because it keeps predators from scaring chickens so they do not develop green muscle disease. So how can we tailor questions specific to that hypothesis? First, how often are chickens scared versus being killed by predators? In what ways does green muscle disease impact your farm's operation and your decision-making? What is most important to you when adopting solutions to protect the health and safety of your chickens? So you're going to create new hypotheses to test for the next set of interviews. Refine your questions to understand what your customers value, how they're prioritizing activities and decisions, and how they measure success. Develop at least 3 questions to ask during interviews that will test this hypothesis, like the chicken example that we have above. I want to close with a few customer discovery do's and don'ts on this slide. So please do ask open-ended questions and see where they lead. Remember to listen more than you're talking. Do ask what else they think you should know. Ask where they go for information about this problem. And do collect their contact information so you can stay in touch or revisit if necessary. And then the list of don'ts. Don't try to push a problem on them. If it's not a shark bite pain point for them, don't try to convince them otherwise. Listen more than you're talking in that regard. Don't sell them on your solution. Again, you're asking questions, testing your hypothesis. Don't start at the top of an organization. As you lay out your ecosystem model, look for those different roles that are played and talk to multiple roles that are in your segment. Don't beat yourself up if you aren't great at this. Remember, it gets easier. The hardest part is starting. Continue to practice, 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 and you will get better. After this session, we hope that you've solidified the skills needed to research, plan, and conduct highly useful customer discovery discussions. Remaining questions on these core concepts, remember to use your resources to find customers. Practice developing strong questions. Remember to book those interviews, be trying early and often. Plan the meeting and track the data. Ultimately, in our workshop, I'd like to hear a few sample questions from you all. For example, a question to explore the need for the product or service you have in mind. A question that would help determine if a competitive offering is already out there, like another business or government offering. What's a good follow-on question to determine their satisfaction with the solution or how they chose it? A question that can inform you of what the individual values and how it's prioritized. A question that would lead to discovering others at the same location, company, or group that you could talk with. And how can we determine how they prioritize outcomes and measure success? Let's dive into that as we begin the workshop. Thank you.